Very good morning, friends, and thank you, Professor Tithiel, for giving me an opportunity for me to participate in your course. I have no financial interest in the contents of my presentation. Now, cataract surgery in post-vitrectomy cataract is different from the routine because the vitrectomy's eyes, which harbor these cataracts, are different from a routine eye in various ways. So, we have to deviate from our usual surgical schedule to optimize the post-operative outcome in these challenging situations. The overall outcome for cataract surgery in these eyes depend upon several factors. But in this presentation today, I'm going to talk to you about an appropriate surgical strategy to optimize the outcomes in these post-vitrectomy cataracts. There are numerous challenges a surgeon should be prepared to face while dealing with these cases. The first problem that the surgeon has to grapple with is the presence of conjunctival scarring. The conjunctival scarring can be present at varying extent, being from very minimal to extensive 360 degrees in patients who have undergone 360-degree buccal vitrectomy surgery. So usually, there's not much of a problem because today it is the norm to perform cataract surgery through a temporal clear corneal approach, so you bypass the conjunctival incision. However, in certain situations, I would still prefer to approach the eye through a scleral tunnel. For example, if I'm dealing with a very hard subluxated cataract and I am not sure whether I'll be able to complete the phaco by performing only phacoemulsification, or I might have to convert to a non-phaco technique. Or if a patient opts for a rigid intraocular lens. In our country, people still opt for a rigid lens because of financial reasons and other reasons. So dissection of a conjunctival flap is difficult but not impossible. You can always make a flap. And then the problem starts is, when you're closing the incision, the conjunctival flap tends to get retracted. So you have to carefully drape it over the incision, and at times you may have to anchor it at the periphery using the atovicryl or nanonylon suture. So this is not really a major problem. So the next problem that the surgeon expects is, these eyes, post-vitrectomy eyes, tend to be extremely soft. So whenever we dissect a corneal tunnel through a very soft eye, it tends to become very long. And we all know that long corneal incisions have the problems. They give rise to overlocking. There can be stromal hydration, and as you try to approach the subincisional area, you have to tilt the phaco handpiece, and that reduces the visibility because of corneal striae. So before you fashion a clear corneal incision, make sure that the globe is formed up by injecting adequate amount of OVD, and then you go for your incision. There are a lot of associated comorbidities in these cases. For example, this particular eye had a foreign body removed from the posterior segment and has a posterior capsular opacity, posterior capsular scar. This was another case where vitrectomy was formed, and we saw a rapid opalescence of the cataract in the first few postoperative periods. Pupil may be small, the corneal endothelium may be jeopardized. Many of these patients will have a very advanced cataract. Usually post-vitrectomy cataracts, the nuclear sclerosis advances pretty rapidly. So the surgeon should be prepared to deal with these kind of problems. Now, another issue that I would like to highlight here is the role of cortical cleaving hydrodissection, which is part and parcel of a routine cataract surgery today. Now, in this particular situation, like for the case that has been shown, patient had undergone a vitrectomy elsewhere, came with a total cataract. So we could not visualize the posterior capsule, and there's no history available. So when we performed a cortical cleaving hydrodissection, what we saw was a classical pupillary snap sign. So many of these patients may have trauma to the posterior capsule, which may or may not be recorded. So one has to be alert to the possibility of having a pre-existing rent. The second problem that the beginning surgeon has to grapple with is fluctuation of the anterior chamber depth. For example, when you inject an OVD here, the pupil becomes really well dilated. It dilates well. As you enter the eye, of course, there are strategies to counter this problem. The pupil becomes absolutely dilated. It's a reverse pupillary block that you see here. And when you come out of the eye, for example, again, the pupil becomes very, very small. So we have to prevent this kind of complication, this kind of scenario from taking place during intraoperative period. Now, how do you tackle the deepening of the anterior chamber? So this is basically what I'm going to show you is how do you tackle a lens iris diaphragm retropulsion syndrome. You enter the eye in a dry manner. Phaco handpiece should go inside the eye in position 0. Anterior chamber is already filled with OVD. And before you come to position 1 and then go down to position 2 or 3, as you saw with my left hand, I raise the pupillary margin, the iris tissue from the capsule, anterior capsule. So this way you can prevent the reverse pupillary block from happening because, you equalize the pressure gradient in a space in front of the iris and behind the iris. And you have to do each and every time you enter the anterior chamber in these compromised situations. Capsulorhexis may be problematic in certain situations. Many of these eyes, silicon oil filled eyes or otherwise, there may be fibrotic plaques which may be missed on the slit lamp biomicroscopy done preoperatively. On trypan blue staining, of course, things become very clear. And you have to deviate again from the routine. In this particular case, there's so much of fibrosis that I had to make a puncture with a special needle and then use the microdexis scissors to make a central opening of the anterior capsule. At this stage, I'm not really worried about the rhexis of the capsular opening running to the periphery because it is a rigid and fibrosed anterior capsule. So it doesn't run away to the periphery. Only thing is there may be cosmetic problems post-operatively because the capsule will appear white. So we do some, excise a little bit of the fibrosed capsule after inserting the intraocular lens. You have to avoid, what you see here is tremendous amount of turbulence, and turbulence results in release of prostaglandins and that induces intraoperative miosis. So you have to avoid turbulence in the anterior chamber, rapid fluctuation of the depth. So it basically boils down to good fluidics, the understanding of fluidics and your proper utilization. Another thing that is unique to many of these eyes is the presence of silicon oil in the posterior segment and sometimes in the anterior segment, and many a time there will be emulsified bubbles. You will get some bizarre reflexes. For example, when I did the cataract surgery, I realized that I did not know whether I was dealing with a big PC dent. It was basically an annular fibrosis with bizarre reflexes because of the silicon oil. So the funny things may happen intraoperatively. So one has to be careful. One has to be alert to that. Now, see, before you start your rhexis, what you see here is the anterior chamber filled with emulsified silicon oil bubble. So that may compromise your visibility. So you have to exchange the silicon oil with an OVD and then continue with your rhexis. And during the surgery, again, emulsified silicon oil will migrate from the posterior segment anteriorly through no apparent zonular dialysis. These silicon oil bubbles can go through the intact zonules, and you may have to repeat the process time and again during the nucleus removal. The surgeon also should be prepared to deal with small pupil situations in these eyes. This particular case, for example, I thought I'm dealing with a very hard cataract, but then intraoperatively I realized that it is basically a buff-colored pupillary membrane which would not come off from the pupillary margin. So I had to create a small hole just adjacent to the pupillary margin on the iris, and then use my macrorhexis scissors from both the side ports and from the main incision, and had to excise the pupillary membrane with a small rim of iris tissue all around it. So, and then it gave me a good enough pupil to perform safe phacoemulsification. As I mentioned earlier, the nucleus tends to be extremely hard in these situations. Sometimes there may be zonular issues. So use a nucleus disassembly strategy that you are comfortable with. Divide and conquer, phaco chop, or stop and chop. For me, of course, I feel that personally, direct phaco chop works pretty well in these situations, and I always make a big crater before I start chopping this nucleus at the center. But you can use any strategy that works well in your hand and doesn't compromise the zonules. Another problem that you encounter towards the final stages is the surge. These eyes are all silicon oil filled eyes. The silicon oil always has a tendency to push the capsule forwards. But in this situation, I'm not really worried because there is a lot of lens material, a lot of stuff there between the phaco handpiece and the posterior capsule. So surge should not give us a problem. But problem arises when you're removing the last piece. As you try to remove the last piece, the occlusion breaks and there will be surge. So whatever be the vacuum you have set up, there will be surge. So in the initial stages, I would recommend that you could use OVD and viscoexpression of the nuclear material, last nuclear base from the anterior chamber, as has been done here. This is again another patient with surge. This was a little interesting, so just 2 minutes. Now this particular patient, if you see here, the surge is so much. This is a small posterior capsular rent here and silicon oil bubble had exploded. So surge is a real issue in many of these patients where there is silicon oil fill in the eye. Posterior capsular plaques are again very frequently seen. Many a time you can't just polish it, they have to be, you have to try to dissect it out. And in this particular case, the plaque was an integral component of the capsule, posterior capsule. So I had to perform a capsulorhexis all around the fibrotic plaque, and that gave me a very clear posterior capsule, the visual axis. So basically, in conclusion, we need to follow guidelines, take a good history, proper patient counseling, a realistic visual outcome is to be emphasized. Perform the surgery early, after the eye has stabilized after the vitrectomy, before the nucleus has become very hard. Use NSAIDs in pre-op and post-operative period for a longer period of time. We usually would not add additives in infusion bottle in a vitrectomized eye. The globe has to be formed up with viscoelastic injection. Perform a rhexis very carefully. This surgery should be performed by senior phaco surgeons because the surgeon has to be adept with a small pupil strategy, hard cataract strategy, subluxury cataracts, so on and so forth. And these patients again require intense post-operative monitoring. So friends, with an appropriate surgical strategy, I'm sure you can optimize the surgical results in these complicated situations. Thank you very much for your attention.